What is very interesting is that when you scratch the surface and you talk to them, they to a person, whether they're left-wing or conservative or liberal, multiculturalist, they all make excuses as to why the nation state is morally inferior to a multicultural standpoint. The concept that I would use that has got any mileage or virtues is multi-ethnic, because multi-ethnic is at least an honest reflection of reality. That is a fact. It's not an ideology. It just recognizes the fact that we live in a world where not all of us are the same. But to move from multi-ethnicity towards multiculturalism is both, as Arthur was saying, to devalue the meaning of culture because it's anti-cultural by definition. But more importantly, it's to ultimately turn national consciousness into a toxic phenomena, something that you're kind of contaminating. So I would advise that we need to be a bit more ruthless and clear and actually not make the slightest concession to multiculturalism.
Well, we're talking about integration outcomes in places such as Leicester, in Bradford, in Manchester, in Birmingham. How do we cultivate stronger forms of social cohesion? So I think that many people, when they're talking, they say that I support multiculturalism. What they really support is just diversity in higher level of British politics, which are two very different things. But what I would like to really hear from the panel is we're very critical of multiculturalism as a philosophy, as a political idea. But how would they say the sort of secular, colourblind, universal model in the French Republic, how that's working out in terms of maintaining social cohesion there?
91% of the girls between 17 and 50 years old circumcised, genetically mutilated. That's a problem. And according to my values, unacceptable. So their tolerance stops. Another example, you find it also in Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union. Democracy. What if a jihadist said, well, democracy is simply not a value for me. I mean, we need a theocracy. We need the government by God. You have a wrong system here, and I come here to Europe, to one of the European countries, to change that, to open your eyes, because theocracy is absolutely superior. Well, then get a list of a certain type of values in that sort, and that helps you to also to see the boundaries of multiculturalism and multiculturalist tolerance as a concept.
A big book written by the Social Democratic, produced by the Social Democratic Party, 260 pages, and it was called Diversity in Higher Education. And that's where the whole ideology of multiculturalism came from. And I found out that two guys had been assigned to write this report, and they couldn't say no. And I talked to one of them. He was a nice guy, and he wasn't that enthusiastic about it, but still he had written it. And this big report, 260 pages, was absolutely crammed with phrases like diversity is enriching, diversity is good, diversity is wonderful, mångfald är fantastiskt in Swedish. And I asked him, so how do you prove, what are your arguments in proving that diversity is so good? How do you give evidence for that? And then he looked me straight in the eye and he said, we don't.
We can get ourselves into interjecting into affairs of other cultures, but by which we're also talking about affairs of other nations and their sovereignty and all those kinds of things, which it kind of gets you the woke imperium. This is why I say a lot of these things that actually there are a pathology, but they come from liberal values as well. Because when you get to go there, and you're absolutely right, the other side can also say, oh, the way that these Westerners are running their life is completely crazy and we have to go and change them, because they also believe in the value of salvation in a different way. So the question is, on this, you are thinking about a way, not tolerance, you don't have to like or respect the way that somebody else does things, but unless we get to an appreciation of particularity, or at least an understanding of particularity that lets us have a modus vivendi globally, we are not going to live, we're going to basically be going from one military campaign to the next, which has been the experience of the American military.
Yeah. So I think we've already mentioned that the idea of multiculturalism is not very fashionable at the moment. You know, Angela Merkel said it, it's over. Suella Braverman said, run its course. So we're just talking about diversity now. And I just wanted to ask the panel, what do you think comes next? You know, what's after? If this multiculturalism is seen as unfashionable and doesn't work, we see ghettoizations in most countries. So, but how does this ideology then sustain itself? What do you think?
So I do not think until we have a complete revaluation of our value in terms of whether or not this mindset, this mentality of ressentiment is a good mentality to have, where we want to actually make this utopian society that's based on complete leveling of all boundaries, of all histories, of all peoples into this, one thing, one mass, and then superficially create these, maybe ghettos or balkanizing society to these different groups, and then asking them to basically politicizing personhood, right? Giving these people a sense of identity, and then, which also these people and people in society, given the meaninglessness of our life today, kind of crave.
Tolerance doesn't mean what it used to mean in the past. You know, what people mean when they say tolerant is they mean they turn a blind eye to people who do weird things like dress up in, sexual bondage gear and walk along the street. They just I tolerate that. Whereas, that's indifference. That's not tolerance. Tolerance used to mean, robustly engaging and saying, well, I disagree with everything you say, everything you do, sexual genital mutilation, but we won't come to blows and kill each other over it, but it's to have a robust discussion.
I think there is the elephant in the room when we talk about multiculturalism, because we don't talk about Swedish culture as opposed to Dutch culture or as opposed to Vietnamese culture. It is mainly about Islam. So when people talk about multiculturalism, they are talking about problems or challenges related to Muslims and to Islam. So when people are in favor of multiculturalism, they are somehow, I would say, they are favoring the idea of Europeans or Swedish people living with Muslims. And I don't think you need always to take sides here to have a normative opinion about it and say things that what's good, what's bad. You can just be very cool and like a sociologist like I am and say that it might not work that well.